We'll go ahead and get started. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Shelby Nelson. I'm the executive director here. And today we're going to be talking about wedding traditions. But we do have a couple upcoming ones. In June, we'll have Jenna Keene from 4-H here talk about history of 4-H in the state and specifically in Clay County as well. And then in July, we'll talk about Iowa statehood and kind of the causes and effects of that throughout the state. In August, we'll have Bree from Clay County Conservation here. I'm not exactly sure what she'll be talking about yet, but it should be interesting. And as part of our wedding traditions, we took out this wedding dress over here, which was worn by Maud McCulley when she married T.Y. Jackson in 1914. So that is her dress, and then we actually have a photo of her sitting in the dress over here on the counter that you can look at afterwards. All right, and we're going to start right with wedding dresses. So in the early Victorian era, so this is like the 1830s to 1860s, she kind of set the tone for wearing the white dress. That's why we have them. Most people didn't really wear white necessarily, but they wore like cream or ivory just because it was more flattering. But with her marriage in February of 1840, she wore like a plain white satin dress and had like an orange blossom hair wreath with a veil. And she looked very plain by royal standards, but it ended up being really popular for other people to kind of mimic. So it was an easy trend to set. By the late Victorian era, so this is going to be like 1870s to 1900, weddings had to be celebrated in the morning for the most part until about this time because of church law. So they changed church law so that you could get married in the afternoon, and that kind of changed the style of wedding dresses. If you were getting married during the daytime, you would have like high necklines and long sleeves, be a little more modest. But if you were getting married like in the evening, they would have lower necklines and they wouldn't have any sleeves. So it kind of depended on the time of day. The 1860s is when veils started to become popular, specifically like over the bride's face, doing that type of tradition. At this point in time, only people in high society, aristocrats, really wore white dress. Working class kind of wore practical colors instead, so they were wearing just kind of paler colors. If a bride was in mourning, if she was getting married in the morning, she would wear black, gray, or lavender. And then if she was getting remarried, she would be dressed in colored silks specifically, and she wasn't allowed to wear a bonnet if she was getting remarried. In the early 20th century, so this is like 1900 to like 1930s, the white dress is now firmly established. That's what everyone's wearing. And we actually have many dresses from this time period in our collection. So these are 3 other dresses aside from this one that are all about the same time. So yeah, everyone's wearing white at this point, and they're generally getting embellished with a lot of lace. All of these dresses have lace, and then either pearls or some kind of beading. The dress out here does have beading right along the sleeves and the neckline. They're kind of hard to see from a distance, but they are there. And they're also being influenced by like outside cultural fashion. So in the 1920s, you had brides' dresses that were like flapper dresses, that style, but they were white, so they were brides' dresses. In the 1930s, you were seeing shorter dresses as well. And they were really getting romanticized and kind of looking back at historical dresses at this point too, with films. So if a dress was really popular in a film, you would see wedding dresses mimicking the style. And then right after this, in like the mid 20th century, kind of pre-World War II and after, you're seeing pure white, and this is when they are actually manufacturing wedding dresses. Before this, like you just kind of found a white dress but now they're specifically making bridal dresses, which was different. In wartime, specifically World War II, brides were wearing either suits or short dresses because of rationing. And if you didn't do that, you were seen as like not patriotic. So if you were wearing a long dress for your wedding, that wasn't okay. And then after the war, because of the leftover materials from the war, specifically parachutes, they were using those to make wedding dresses. And so this is kind of an example of the suits. This is a handmade one from that era, and we have this in our collection. And then this is from a different museum, but that is actually a silk parachute dress. The bride's husband brought back German parachutes after World War II, and they had somebody craft that dress for her. So, and then into the 1960s and on, in the 1960s, historical fashion is back. You're seeing like a lot of high waist lines and that kind of A-line empirical style. In the 1970s, that kind of traditional style goes away and dresses become a lot looser. Wedding ceremonies change a lot too. People start getting married outside instead of getting married in a church. They start having flowers in their hair instead of wearing veils. They start writing their own vows instead of following the traditional vows set by whatever church. And the structures of the dresses were just a lot looser, and they were also a lot simpler. I don't have any pictures of these. Then I also want to talk a little bit about men's fashion during this time. So starting way back in the late Victorian era, so again, 1860 to 1900s, men were wearing a frock coat in either like blue, red, or like a deep red, purple, mulberry type color. They were wearing white waistcoats, and then they were wearing like either like a pale tan trouser or like gray or even lavender trousers. They were not allowed to wear any black. Black was not appropriate for weddings at that point. In the 1880s, we see kind of the longer morning coat is gone away, and they're wearing shorter coats. And now they're allowed to wear black and like navy to their weddings. We also see the emergence of ties during that time. In the 1890s, the frock coat of the 1860s makes a comeback. And is worn in black, but only again in the afternoon weddings. This is when you could start getting married in the afternoon, and you didn't have to get married in the morning. So they were allowed to wear black in the afternoon. And if you were getting tailcoats, which was a popular evening wear for men, you could wear that if you were attending a wedding, but not if you were the groom. Grooms were not allowed to wear tailcoats. Tuxedos were also around, but you couldn't wear a tuxedo if you were getting married either. It was considered too informal for a wedding. And then again, if you were part of upper class, you couldn't wear tuxedos, or they were calling them like lounge coats. You couldn't wear those. But if you were part of lower class, that was considered best dress. So there was different standards for men as well as women as far as class. In the early 20th century, they're kind of still wearing the same thing: frock coats, trousers, lighter colored waistcoat. But when World War I came around, they started wearing more coats with cutaways in them, things that just use less fabric. Working men were generally wearing darker colored clothing than like high society men. People of the working class were wearing darker colors until the 1930s, and then you could start wearing your tuxedo if you were getting married. And that's kind of what stuck around, is wearing some kind of formal suit or rented tuxedo. During the 1970s, again, men were wearing ruffles and bright clothing, which is what this picture is from. Today, they kind of have any option they want. It's generally a tuxedo that's rented, but they have a wide variety of things as well. A big part of wedding are the wedding rings. So I found a couple superstitions or beliefs about why we exchange wedding rings the way we do. So some people believe that it's tied back to ancient times and like the beginnings of when humans started using metal, and it was a way to tie each other together and be connected to the earth because metal was coming from the earth. It was also a sign of a woman being owned by her husband, so it was that symbol for that other people could see. We typically wear our wedding rings on our left hand because it was believed that an artery runs from your ring finger on your left hand all the way to your heart. So that way, like, your ring was connected to your heart. Diamond rings started becoming popular among upper class in the late 1400s. But until the diamond industry really boomed and was growing, most women in America were actually receiving other precious stones, and those each had their own meaning as well. So if you were given a ruby, it was thought to protect you from evil, and opal was a promise of faithfulness. Sapphire in a wedding ring was meant to symbolize marital happiness. A pearl engagement ring, however, was said to be bad luck because they were commonly in the shape of a tear in their setting. Snake rings were popular for a certain time in Victorian England, and they tended to have ruby eyes, and then the snakes would coil together, and that was to symbolize eternity. Aquamarine represented marital harmony and was said to ensure a happy marriage. Today, most brides are preferring lab-grown diamonds instead of mined diamonds. And there's also a superstition that if the ring bearer or the best man drops the ring, that evil spirits will be released and your wedding and marriage will be ruined. So a little bit about veils and bridal bouquets. So veils are thought to kind of come from arranged marriages and the thought of that if the groom didn't see the bride before the wedding, he wouldn't run away from her. So it was kind of to make sure everybody stuck around and went through with it. There's also some ties to being traced back to Roman times as like a symbol of the bride's modesty. Some cultures believe that the veil will also ward off evil spirits and give the bride good luck. And that goes kind of with the bridal bouquets. So in ancient Roman Greece, the bridal bouquets were mainly herbs, and that was said to ward off evil spirits. Queen Victoria kind of set the trend with flower bouquets in her wedding. And the idea of tossing your bouquet actually comes from England as well. So in England, brides were thought to be extremely lucky. And so people would chase down the bride and try and get a piece of her dress so that they could take some of her luck. And so instead of getting trampled by other women, she would throw her bridal bouquet behind her to toss on and pass on her good luck and spare her wedding dress. Boutonnieres are kind of the same thing as far as warding off evil spirits. A lot of historians also believe the idea of using herbs for your flowers, whether it's your bouquet or boutonniere, was to help with smell as well. Here is a veil that we have in our collection from the early 1900s. It's almost 4 feet long when it's all trained out. So. A bridal shower and bridesmaids are kind of an offshoot of, bridal showers anyway, are an offshoot of the dowry practice. So there's a story that bridal showers originated in Holland because a young woman of the wealthy class wanted to marry a poor miller, and her father wouldn't allow the marriage, and therefore he wasn't going to pay her dowry for the wedding. Instead, the village or community that they were living in came together and they showered her with household items so that she could marry the miller, because a lot of times the dowry also included furniture items and clothing from her mother. So that is supposedly where the idea of bridal showers comes from. Bridesmaids, the idea of them being in matching dresses, they actually used to more closely resemble the bride's dress herself, so that they could be decoys. Again, brides were thought to be good luck, and so they were worried about people stealing away brides, and so they would all go to the ceremony dressed the same, and then they would all leave at the same time in different carriages. So that way people who were trying to steal the bride might get one of the decoys instead. Let's see. And then we have the wedding cake tradition. So the idea of cutting your wedding cake used to be strictly just the bride who did that as a sign of her fertility. Now couples do it together, which is supposed to represent them coming together and caring for each other. And there is also the idea of saving your wedding cake for a year later. That comes from a practice that was started in the late 1900s in America, of saving the top tier for your first child's christening, which was generally a year after you got married. Most people today, a lot of bakeries will just remake your cake for you 1 year anniversary, but that is where that comes from. And I guess going along with cutting the cake, at some point in time, it was considered bad luck to gift knives at weddings. And then lastly, we have the quote, "Something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue." This also comes from England. And so some say that just the saying itself is supposed to help ward off evil spirits, and like following through with it is just supposed to keep you safe. There are other translations of it that put a meaning for each line. So something old is supposed to be the couple past lives coming together, while something new is supposed to be a happy future. Something borrowed is generally from another couple who is happily married to also make your marriage be happy. And then the color blue is the color for fertility and love, and so that is why you're supposed to wear something blue at your wedding as well. I don't know if you guys have any questions. It's kind of a short one.
Are you filming the question section?
Generally, I think so. We're very short on people today, so there's normally more discussion.
It was a dangerous thing to get married.
Yeah, apparently.
Like if somebody, nowadays it's, an honor to be asked to be a bridesmaid, but that's kind of scary. Like, you might be kidnapped.
Yeah, you might be kidnapped, but like,
So you can get kidnapped instead of me.
yeah. And they like paid care to make sure that everyone was like the same height and stuff too. Like some people went apparently all out in making these decoyed brides.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, if that's what you believe in.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's hard to like tell where myth meets the truth. And like some people, it was like if just like a princess was getting married, that's what they did. But other sources made it sound like that's kind of what everybody was doing. So I don't know. But yeah.
What is this dress like lace over?
Satin, yeah.
It's pretty.
Very pretty, very simple.
And it's too small for that mannequin. So it's not closed up in the back.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
You can tell it looked a really small size.
Mm-hmm. And there were other wedding dresses in the box with that one, and they were also all very small.
And that was a local person, you said that?
Yeah, in Clay County, local.
How many wedding dresses do we have here?
Oh, I don't even know.
A lot, I know.
A lot, yeah.
Have you ever done a wedding exhibit? Like just,
I
that would be
don't
cool.
know if we have or not.
We did one out at the fairgrounds with the dresses from people who got married at the fair.
Oh.
That's been quite a while ago.
Oh yeah, Braden, because we were actually going to try and get one of those dresses, but they're all at the fair.
Mm-hmm.
They did an exhibit one year that was
That's
wedding
cool.
dresses from people married at the Clay County Fair.
Mm. Is that still a venue? Can you still do that? Get
I
married
think
there?
so.
I don't know the last time somebody did.
Yeah.
I haven't-
But my understanding is that those weddings were all paid for by the fair, and like your honeymoon and everything. It was like some kind of prize in a way. I'm not sure exactly how you won it, but yeah. So you would get married at the like during the fair, and then
Oh, I see.
they would send you off on your honeymoon and everything.
Mhm. Oh. No, it's all very fascinating. And the traditions around the clothing, what's appropriate or not appropriate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really just whatever people want, right, at the
Yeah.
time. Because some
Yeah.
of it is the opposite of what's today. Some of it's the same, but it's
Yeah.
really just what is considered.
And that's just like in European culture, especially like the color thing, like wearing white, and like Lao weddings. They don't wear white because that's what you wear to a funeral. And a lot of Asian tradition, you wear red instead.
Mm-hmm. Or they're not wearing black, like that makes sense when you say it, but that's so normal now for like the guys to
Yeah.
wear black. Like of course, like that's like a mourning color, right? Like, but
I assume that's why, they weren't allowed to
wear Right.
black for their wedding.
now that's very normal.
It's fascinating the men wore lilac pants.
Yeah.
I don't
Specifically, yeah.
That just strikes me as
Purple pants.
Pants. But I mean the color symbolism. I mean that all makes sense. Like what they were wearing.
Yeah.
The time of day thing is interesting though.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Do you know what? You said something about the church made the rule. Do you know why? Like in
I
the
have
morning.
no idea why the church required you to get married in the morning. There was also a little bit of research on like the best day of the week to get married. And traditionally it was Wednesday. Not really sure why. And it was also considered bad luck to get married on Saturday, which is funny because that's kind of when everyone gets married now, is on the weekend. But
But a lot of people used to get married on Sunday afternoon.
Mm. You know, like as part of the church service?
It was in the afternoon. Yeah. My parents got married in the afternoon, Sunday afternoon. You just assumed everybody got married on Saturday, and
Mhm.
then it was Sunday
Oh,
afternoon.
we lost our.
there it goes.
I like the part about how it used to be herbs instead of flowers. And that makes a lot of sense, but the smell thing, I mean, it sounds funny, but you have to remember, like, bathing was not,
Yeah, it was not standard
it was not a thing
practice.
for, like, very, very often, so that might have been, like, a legit thing.
All depending on how cramped they were and whatever
Right,
church
kind
they
of.
were at. Yeah.
Trying to, like, look your best and, you know,
Yeah.
so it's funny.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that a lot of the wedding tradition, as far as like veils, flowers, all of that, all goes back to just Queen Victoria's wedding in 1840. Before that, like people just didn't wear white. That was not common. And, like you didn't have pretty flowers or anything.
Do you think that, was it, even the, like, upper class of royalty, you think it was a lot more minimal, like, before that?
It was a lot more extravagant. You were wearing like furs and
Oh, I
giant jewelry and lots of beads encrusted into your gown of various colors. So yeah, it was a lot more extravagant. They thought her style was very simple and plain. And then her daughters actually ended up copying her, and that's kind of, I think, how it caught fashion. It was also something that could be duplicated by common people. But yeah.
I thought it was interesting where the actual style of the dress was influenced so much by other things, or that the wedding dress itself wasn't even really a thing.
Yeah, until like
It-
the 1930s,
yeah.
40s is when they actually started producing wedding dresses. Otherwise, it was somebody made it for you, or like it was just you found one that happened to be that color.
I need a nice dress for this occasion. Let me.
Yeah,
Because that's such a huge like industry now,
right.
and that's not that long ago. But all this stuff is pretty new.
I thought the parachute dress was really cool.
I mean, at least from far away, it looks really nice. I don't know what
Yeah.
goes up if it's weird, but.
But they were silk, the parachute was silk.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So it is.
So it was, nice fabric.
But does it have like weird stitching? And, I just imagine
I
it like
don't know.
looking really. I don't know.
Or like if it's stamped on the underside, whatever logo.
Right. That's. But I mean, it looked. Yeah. At least from what I could see, I mean, it looked pretty. I don't.
Yeah. And it was apparently really common in Europe because that's where all these parachutes were. But the fact that this person brought them back, yeah.
I wonder what the woman thought of it. If she was like, "Yay, German fabric," or she was like,
Yeah.
I don't want to wear this." Yeah. And the war rationing too makes a lot of sense. You don't think of that, especially World War II, like literally everything.
Yeah.
Which is, you wouldn't think it would affect that sort of.
Yeah, and women's fashion in general at that time, that hemlines were rising because there was less fabric. But the idea that like if you wore too much fabric on your wedding day, you were like anti-American and anti-war, and that was really bad. It's kind of astounding because just it being a special day, it's supposed to be about you. But
I wonder if they had. You know how you always see all the old posters about during the war. I wonder if there was any. I don't know if I've ever seen one about fabric.
propaganda one.
But maybe. It's all very interesting.
It is cool, thank you.
Yeah. And then the gemstones as well. I feel like
I think they're making a comeback.
it seems more like not necessarily. Not necessarily everyone has a diamond. I feel like that's more. The variety is more common, and you talk about all the other ones
Yeah.
that have meanings.
Yeah, that they put certain meanings with each color. That pearl, I thought that was funny because they were putting pearls on dresses, but you couldn't have it as your engagement ring.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't. Yeah, I don't really see pearl even now. It's not.
Yeah, I don't know anybody with a pearl. I know a few people with like opal, which I think they talked about a little bit, but yeah. There are note cards on your tables. I'm collecting at all of these. I'm having people finish on one side, finish the statement my community shares, and at the end of the year, I'm going to make a little like word map to see what everyone puts. And the more people say a certain word, the larger it'll appear in that map. So, and then on the other side, if you can answer these 3 questions. Specifically the future topics as we think about the rest of the year. I also will say it was like impossible to find pictures of like early men's clothing for weddings. It was only pictures of brides. And then a couple upcoming events. Iowa Museum Week is June 6th through 12th, and that's mainly a social media thing. But we'll be ending that week with the Parker Museum open house that Sunday, June 12th. From 1 to 4. So it's free and anybody can come and look at the house during that time. All right. Well, thank you guys for coming. Feel free to look closely at either.